Marcus Parsley, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you for having me.
I know that we've been trying to get you here for a while, but you're a professional touring trumpeter.
Yeah, probably for the past, I don't know, 14, 15 years, the touring thing has been my sort of bread and butter. Before that, there were a lot of house gigs and playing gigs around a scene, whether it was in the Southeast or for 14 years in New York City. But eventually I started getting calls to play in bands that had horn sections and toured, and that sort of took over and became the thing. And that's also what kind of brought me back to Florida from New York, was the fact that I was on the road 110, 120 days a year, and an apartment in Manhattan feels pretty pricey when you're never there, you know? So I kind of made that practical decision.
Do you like touring? Do you enjoy it?
I do. I still enjoy it. It was something I always wanted to do as a young musician. And, there's a grueling aspect of it, obviously, but I haven't gotten old enough to be tired of that yet. And I still enjoy it. Yeah.
Now, there's other musicians that you're touring with, right? So the current situation you're in, the Mofro.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project?
JJ Gray and his band Mofro. It's a really cool opportunity that came to me 10 years ago. I grew up in Jacksonville, and JJ grew up just right outside of Jacksonville, and he's a few years older than me. But when I was in my early to mid 20s, I was in some original projects that were playing in the places that had original music in the Jacksonville area. And so was he, with a different band, not Mofro just yet. And so we crossed paths and met each other, and we're acquainted and all that sort of thing. And I was a fan of what he was doing, and it was, cool. And I figured he was destined for cool stuff. And years went by. I moved to New York at about 28, 29 years old. And I got a phone call one day. Hey, you remember JJ Gray, and he's going to add horns to his band, and do you want to put your name in the hat for that? Because, he's looking for recommendations. And I was like, man, I just moved to New York and I just got this great gig, and I'm just settling in. I just, I can't do it. And I was kind of heartbroken because I wanted to seize that opportunity,
Sure.
But there was just a lucrative opportunity right in front of me that I had just settled into. And which was also a great opportunity. I'll tell you about that later or another time. But I was, as it turned out, years later, he again had an opening in his horn section, and I got the phone call again in 2014, and joined up. Went, I think, a few weeks later, flew down to Florida, and we did the first thing I did with him was record an album, a record called Old Glory. And it's great working with JJ. He's awesome, great boss, brilliant musician, singer, and songwriter. And he kind of writes and arranges everything, and we get to kind of help him fine tune it, and it's a fun process. The crew's great, the band's great. Since I've been in the band, it's been kind of ramping up, and we're in a really good place right now.
Are you playing bigger venues now and bigger shows? Is he getting more fans?
Yeah. There's an effort to step up. Like this past, we just put out a record in 24, and it's being well received. And usually when JJ goes in the studio, the band used to be 7 pieces, but usually in the studio we add some extra stuff, an additional horn player or two, some background singers, maybe some percussion. And last year he decided, let's have all those guys out on the road with us. And he also wanted to have a full-time lighting director and, add some pieces to the crew. So we had to go to 2 tour buses instead of 1. And we began an effort to start playing some larger houses. And so maybe less of the 1,000 to 1,500 seat music halls and more of the 2,000 to 3,000 seat theaters.
Yeah, just to get the band on the stage. It's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we have squeezed 11 people onto some small stages, but yeah, we typically play pretty large stages.
So how many horns would be in a horn section?
It can be 2 guys, and I've seen as many as 6. It's kind of how thick do you want it to be?
Would it be a trombone and a trumpet, or a trumpet and a sax?
I've seen every variation you can think of out there. I've heard some that I was like, wow, they've got a saxophone and a trombone. I don't know. There's no trumpet, selfishly, I want there to be a trumpet up there. And then I hear it and I'm like, that's amazing. So yeah, it's, good musicians find a way to use the strengths of their instrument to be musical.
Is there a lot of work for someone that plays the trumpet in music today?
Um,
Or is it maybe more of a, was it
I
more
mean,
of a
I would
70s,
I would
80s?
say that there are a long list of instruments ahead of that one that you could have more opportunity with. But I wouldn't say that there's a lack of work for trumpet players. No, I mean, I can only really speak from my own experience, and I've been fortunate to just have opportunities constantly kind of come my way. And I think that that could be true for anyone that just sort of dedicates themselves to a craft and works hard at it.
Do you think there's more of a more appreciation now for horn instruments? Like, for an example, saxophones were really, really popular once. And like back in the
Sure,
MTV 80s,
sure.
every band had to have a saxophone player.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's like I remember all those. There was like scenes in films that were real popular back in the 80s where there was like a guy with long hair playing a alto saxophone like this. Yeah, that was definitely a thing for a little while. Like remember the Lethal Weapon soundtrack
Yes.
always had this soaring alto saxophone. But yeah, I think that it goes through seasons like a lot of things. There's trends that come and go, and horn sections as a novelty or as an integral part of a band, it sort of goes through waves of popularity. But there's always work out there if you stay mindful and opportunistic and on top of your craft. It's
I remember the first guy that I heard on the radio was Chuck Mangione.
sure.
And I guess that was like what, maybe the late 70s, early 80s.
Mhm.
He was all over the radio.
Oh yeah.
And that was the
Well,
first time I said to myself, wow, this guy
and
is.
before him, it was Herb Alpert, who was a major record executive. He owned a label. Or co-owned a label that was huge. But yeah, there seems like there's always a guy, and when we were chatting earlier before we started taping, you talked about Chris Bodie, and he's sort of the modern incarnation of that. And it's cool. I'm glad there's a guy. I'm glad there's a guy out there helping promote the instrument all the time.
I just think his sound is so cool, man.
Yeah, it's great.
It's I could say it's sexy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's sophisticated.
Yeah. Yeah, the instrument can lend itself to that, and there have been a lot of, the forefathers of the jazz world.
Tell us who those are.
Done that. Well, I mean, you can go all the way back to Louis Armstrong. There are recordings from him that dipped into that mode a little bit. But I mean, for me, it's always like Chet Baker and Miles Davis had a lot of recordings that were very evocative of that sort of feeling and vibe. And
what's your favorite Miles Davis record? That might be a hard question, right?
I mean, you found my button because I'm a Miles Davis nerd. That's sort of maybe my biggest inspiration as far as being a trumpet player. Maybe not as a musician, but as a trumpet player. Miles really. I started studying music in college as a music minor, and then heard this Miles Davis record and became a music major. So it was a big thing for me. I don't know if it's my favorite record because it changes. I change my mind all the time about which one's my favorite. But there was a time in the 90s where his recording, Porgy and Bess, which he did with the orchestra, Gil Evans, I believe, the CD got stuck in the CD player of my car. I couldn't get it out. And I didn't care. I just listened to it for like a year.
Oh, it still worked, but it was stuck. That's funny.
Yeah. So that's probably my favorite. There's some moments on that are the chill bumps.
So someone with your ear for trumpet, right?
Mhm.
For jazz. So when you're listening to this particular album, is it like ear candy, man? Is it like just incredible? Like everything to you is just perfect?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I dove into learning and emulating Miles Davis to a point where I would spend half an hour trying to crack a note the way that he cracked it, like his mistakes, like just trying to make the same mistake in the same place, the same way, because it had a vibe to it. So yeah. There are moments on all of his records where I go, oh.
Is he better live than in the studio?
I never got to hear Miles live. He passed in the 90s, I believe. And I was just beginning my adventure with the trumpet at that point. I played trumpet as a kid, but I didn't have any intentions or seriousness about it until about the time that he passed.
So did you ever play guitar, or when you were younger, were you into, more?
Piano. Yeah, I learned a little bit of piano. Never dedicated myself to it. It just didn't interest me enough at the time. As a kid, I was into like surfing, skateboarding. Chasing girls.
But were you accomplished on the piano?
No, no, just enough to understand the basic theory and harmony, and to this day, I have keyboards at home, and that's when I sit down to write music, which is a passion as well. That's where I do that. That's where I start. So you don't really want to hear me perform on piano necessarily unless I really
It's a
practice a lot.
tool.
But it's a great writing tool for
Yeah.
me. It's all laid out. You know what I mean? You can see everything. It's you can find the sound you're looking for by fishing around.
So when you're on tour with JJ, and you're in a full concert, I'm assuming it's a 3-hour show.
It's about usually 2 hours to 2.5 hours.
Are horns on pretty much every song, or are there times when you guys are just back there chilling and hanging out a little bit?
I think lately there's like one song that we don't play on, and then there's like a song that has a long instrumental break without horns where we can walk off stage for a minute. But and JJ is a storyteller. He's a really great
I
storyteller.
love this. I love the song "Lock Lusa."
Yeah. And a lot of his songs tell stories, and then he will tell you stories about the songs in between the songs, which gives the horn section a little break so we might not necessarily step off stage, but we get to rest our chops.
You have a little stool maybe you can sit on? Or
no, we don't.
You have to stand the whole time?
We don't go that far, but it's cool. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and he's put it together well, and it's programmed well, and the horns are featured plenty, and they're not overly thrown into everything. It's some songs are horn heavy and some are not, and you find a way there's a balance there to be found.
So the sound engineer that's out there mixing the band, and I'm familiar with, as a rock band myself, I understand all that works. But is it different mixing the horns live? Is it like a different kind of
I'm sure it's a
talent that's needed?
I'm sure it's a challenge. And our current guy is named Bill Parker. He's very, very talented. Great. He's one of the great things about him for me is that he did a lot of touring with I think it was Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, one of the real popular ska bands back in the 90s. And that's all, there's lots of horns, and so he's adept at writing faders and keeping the horns balanced and making sure you can hear all of them, but one voice isn't out performing the other dynamically, and he's great at it. I'm sure it's a challenge. I did ask him a few times. I was like, if one of us is backing off the mic, or one of us is playing stronger than the other at a moment, or one of us is having a chop problem that day, I was like, do you have to? And he goes, oh yeah, I've got tricks. So it's a talent.
Are you guys wearing inner ears?
Mm-hmm.
So you each have your own inner ear.
Yeah, we switched to in-ear monitors probably around 2017 or so. Jerry Harvey in Orlando makes incredible products, and we got a little deal with him, and it changed my life, because playing with a wedge as a horn player on stage with a rock band, there used to be a lot of stage volume for us on stage. We have very little because everyone's in their ears. We don't have to have a really loud guitar amp for everyone to hear it on stage. It's been great. I have a much better endurance for performance. Like, I'm not tired at the end of a 2.5 hour show. And if I need to hit that high F 3 ledger lines above the staff to end the night, it's there for me, because I didn't kill myself trying to hear myself all night long, and
Right.
not being able to get the monitor, and you're waving at the guy going,
Sure.
turn up my monitor. And
what do you like to have what do you like to put in your mix? Like in your ear, what do you want to hear?
Yeah. I like to pan things, so they're all separate. I pan everyone a little bit differently on stage, and I pan them in the way that we're set up on stage. So if the drummer's on the right side of the stage, I've got him over there, and his right cymbal's panned even further right than his hi-hat would be on his left side. And there's 2 horn players to my right, so I'm panned here, the middle guy's panned here, and so I do that. That's a big part of it. But I like a lot of bass. I keep a lot of hi-hat and overhead cymbal in my mix, just so I'm always constantly aligned rhythmically with the drummer. because we have a lot of rhythmic entrances and lines, and they need to be precise, I have to hear JJ because there are vocal cues that I rely on, and if he happens to sway in his arrangement that night of the song or stretch a section, I know when he sings this, we're going to start this horn line, and then all of the other chordal instruments, guitars and keyboards, I want to hear enough of that I can always have that as an intonation reference to be in tune. I don't need a ton of that. I do like a fair amount of the rhythm guitar though, because there's a rhythmic propulsion there that I also need to be aligned with. So
because you guys are touring regularly, you probably have this all set up. You may have to make minor adjustments with your mix.
Yeah, we travel with our,
but you're locked in more or less.
Our in-ear rig, our monitor rig travels with us, and it's all set up and preset, and we save everything and from show to show, and we can make adjustments. Everybody, if you'd like, you can have an iPad or a phone hidden on stage somewhere discreet, and we have an app, and you can actually make adjustments to your mix on the fly.
Yeah, I mean that's what I do on my tablet when I'm playing.
Yeah, sure. So it's it's funny though, because when we first started doing that, like, it didn't dawn on me initially that I can't sit there and hold my phone and move faders around, because it literally looks like I'm sending text messages while I'm on stage performing. It's a horrible look. Don't want to.
So are you still a student of the trumpet? Like, are you still challenging yourself? Are you still learning?
Yeah.
Growing? I mean, you're not like getting bored at this point, right? It's always still.
No, it's a really challenging instrument by its nature, at least for me. I'm sure there are some guys out there. I encountered some guys in New York that made it seem effortless, but speaking of New York, so a lot of the old jazz heads that I got to rub shoulders with when I was there, I was a real big jazz nerd, and that's what brought me there. I know I branched out of the jazz world into the soul bands and things like that, and have horn sections, but I spent a lot of time in the jazz circles, and some of the older guys that I admired and had records of at home, I'd pick their brain when I could at 2 a.m. at the bar down in the Village, and so many of them said to me some version of this, and it's this refrain of, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. You may not realize it, but maintaining is a myth. You can't. If you think you're maintaining, you're getting worse more than likely, and you don't realize it. So I do strive to. I go through seasons of when I'm able to practice a lot and when I'm not because of the other job. But before I prepare to go out on a tour, I make sure I put the time in, and I feel like I'm as good as I was when I last got off the road to start the thing, and that I'm pushing myself in an upward direction from there, so that while the tour wears on, in my practice sessions and warm up sessions throughout that time, I'm pushing myself to be better at the end of that tour than I was in the beginning.
Sure. Are the set lists pretty much the same for every show throughout the whole tour?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. JJ has his moods, and sometimes it will adjust it according to what we're getting great response from. Sometimes he'll adjust it based on the way his voice is feeling, what songs he wants to sing, where he feels good in his range and stuff like that. And other times it's just like, this is how I want it artistically to happen, and we're going to make this happen.
Are there any surprises or anything spontaneous?
Occasionally, yeah, he'll throw us a curveball every now and then.
Like "Happy Birthday to You."
No, it's usually like a song, because he's got several records out, so there's a pretty big catalog. I mean, it's keeping 60 songs in your head can be tough, and so if there's something off of one of the older albums that we haven't played in a year or two, and he just got a request for it right before the gig from someone that he met, a fan or whatever. And he'll just throw it in there, and we're like, ooh.
Do you have access to
look at each
music?
other like, do you remember this? No, we try not to have any of that.
But can you turn to your guy next to you and say, "Hey, man, what the fucking keys is this?"
I mean, if I had somewhere to hide a tablet, I'd probably have a cheat sheet or two. But no, I just challenge myself to memorize everything. And usually what happens is when you've been in a band, I've been with them 10 years, so when you've been in a band that long, there's a muscle memory, and there's a thing that happens where the song is about to go from the chorus to the bridge, or the verse to the chorus. And when the guitar player hits that next chord, the notes come rushing back. You remember it, you know,
Yeah,
and it just comes to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I try to, I mean, if I play a jazz gig nowadays, I have to read some stuff because I can't remember all of that material that I memorized in my 20s and 30s.
So because you're touring so long with JJ for what, 10 years now?
Yeah.
When you're off, are you playing with other bands? Are you doing solo stuff? Like what are you doing when you're off?
When I'm off, it used to be a lot, whatever opportunities came that were of interest or, you know, musical integrity or, you know, something fun. But 4 years ago, I took the job at the Twisted Fork and Birchback Porch as their concert promoter and entertainment director. And so my time is pretty well taken up when I'm
And you're
off
doing
the
a
road.
fantastic job, by the way.
No, thank you.
Because you're bringing in some really good acts, man.
Thank you.
Not just the local stuff like Jacked Up,
Yeah.
but you're bringing in regional, you're bringing in national,
Yeah.
you're bringing in some of the best tribute acts in the country.
Thank you. Yeah. It's fun. You know, there's a really big gratification level of at the end of a night when we're starting to pack up the gear and I'm watching 500, 600, 700 people walk out of there with big smiles on their faces.
Like New Year's Eve.
I feel like, oh, we did a good thing tonight. You know, that's cool. And I love that. I love seeing that. It makes me very happy. It's a lot of work. Drives me batty at times, but it pays off, you know, and I love seeing people happy from being well entertained.
Well, Twisted Fork is the premier Southwest Florida venue.
No.
Everybody knows this, right? You guys have a big stage. You have great sound. You have a great sound technician. Everybody who sits in that chair that I interview is a top-notch musician. So they've played the Twisted Fork, and they all agree it's one of their favorite venues to play.
That's great. I love to hear that. I do, because it's been a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears for me and my brother making it into what it is. And we're only maybe 2/3 of the way there of making it what we want it to be. We've got big plans.
Do you think because you're both musicians, you approach it differently than another perhaps venue might approach music?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, if we weren't a mom and pop one-off type place and we had like corporate money and big investors and stuff like that, we probably would have right from the very beginning dumped hundreds of thousands of dollars into production equipment and stage and lights and sound and all of that fun stuff and made it into more of a like world-class venue. But you know, we're doing what we can do with the budget that we have.
It's evolving. Like your stage is getting bigger, your roof's getting bigger.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to add curtains. You're starting to put up more scouts. So like it's a process, right?
It's a process. Yeah. You know, we need to get through a season of doing well in order to you know, the restaurant industry is tough, you know, like it's the profit margins in the restaurant business are pretty small. And so I can't ask the food and beverage arm of the business to pay for when I want to buy a new speaker array, or I need 2 new subwoofers, or I need to repair this gear, or I want to get these really awesome lights instead of these knockoffs that I've got, you know? And so I have to feed that, but that's why we do ticketed events. You know, maybe we'll have free general admission in half of the house, and the front portion will be a VIP seating area that you can buy a ticket and you can eat on the dinner buffet.
Yeah, and the food's good too.
Yeah, great food there. And so those ticketed events, after paying the band and the production costs and everything that happens, whatever little bit is left over, that's how we keep improving the space.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you usually sell out almost every ticketed event.
I haven't looked at the exact percentage of that, but we're probably somewhere around 85% of the events sell out. Yeah. We've been lucky that way. I've had to learn a lot about marketing that I did not know before taking this job, and it's cool. I became an analytics nerd. Did not see that coming. I've had to learn spreadsheets. Did not see that coming. But it's great. It's you know, the thing that we're very blessed with, and you and I both, is that the Southwest Florida community supports live music.
They're hungry.
Really well.
Hungry for live music.
And I came up in Jacksonville. I have performed in 48 of all the contiguous United States and 30 countries around the globe. And I will tell you, this area supports live music very well.
Well, let's get into that. And here's why.
It's cool.
I think there's a lot of people who are retired now, right? They're in their 60s and 70s. They have disposable income.
Yeah.
They grew up listening to the classic rock radio in the 60s and 70s. So now, you know, with their entertainment money, right? Mm-hmm. They want to go to the Twisted Fork. It's an affordable ticket, right? The food is delicious.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that everybody eats and drinks when they're there, right? I mean, I've never seen
it's a big part of the experience. And I do see people that show up and bring a folding chair and sit in the back of the house and just soak in the music. And we love having them there, and they're welcome every time and all the time. And then there are people that, they make a full night of it. They show up at 5:30. They might have a drink at the bar inside, and then they'll come out to their VIP seats, and the dinner buffet opens at 6:30 and the opener comes on, and they're there with 8 of their friends, and and they're there until 10:30, enjoying all the music. And I see a lot of that. And it seems to be a big part of it. I mean, the fact that my brother and the folks that are helping him with the restaurant arm of the business, they did a great job putting a menu together. They do a great job keeping their quality control up, and
great Facebook and social media.
Absolutely.
Is that all you? Absolutely. Are you doing the posting?
That is Tyler does most of our Facebook stuff. He does a great job with our social media. I just kind of feed him stuff to include, and it's that part of it is a lot of work that we didn't see coming either. Like we had to learn that landscape.
Well, let's talk about the synergy with Harley, because I'm friends with Perry.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Perry's great.
Yeah, I've known her for a long time.
Yeah.
And she's great people. Now she's back. She's been in other places, but she's back now.
Yeah.
And you guys have a wonderful relationship with Bert's Black Widow. Talk about that relationship.
Well, it's, first of all, thank you, Bert King, for letting us do this and supporting it so well. It's funny, there's 2 Berts. Bert King owns Black Widow Harley Davidson, and the campus of Black Widow is huge, and of course he built this pavilion space initially with the mindset of we'll have like kind of biker rallies and biker events and different.
So just to let the audience know, there's this giant metal roof. Like what are the dimensions in that thing? It's like it's massive.
I have them somewhere, but I think it's somewhere around 26,000 square feet of covered space.
So if it rains, you're covered.
Yeah. So it's really cool. And he, at some point he met my brother, the other Bert Parsley, and they got to talking about there should be a restaurant there.
Because there was nothing there. It was empty.
There was a little strip mall that was part of the campus that he leased to little storefronts, and it just wasn't really doing well and wasn't doing much. And he, in his mind, he was like, I really want that to be a restaurant. And he, by chance, happened to meet my brother because someone from across the room while they were at a restaurant said Bert, and they both turned to see who was calling their name. They're like, wait, are you Bert? You're Bert. And somehow that evolved into, I want a restaurant at my dealership. And my brother was getting into the restaurant.
Right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And he knows what he's doing. I mean, your brother knows what he's doing.
He's done a fantastic job. Yeah.
He's got a lot of experience. I'm assuming he's done this before.
He was in the restaurant game as a young man before he branched into sales with autos and real estate. But he had a passion for it as a young man. And then when people that he knew in the real estate game began investing into restaurant groups in Fort Myers, he kind of got the bug again.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I'd really love to do my own place, And we've always been into hot rods and motorcycles. That's something that we loved as kids. And, when we were 16, 18 years old, we'd be in the driveway in the backyard tinkering on an old Mustang or a Camaro. And so it was kind of in our blood. And so he rapidly had a concept for a place that would work on the campus of a Harley Davidson dealership. And he put that together and pitched it to Bert King, and it's working great.
Because there's also a Bert's Barracuda up in Clearwater.
Yes.
And there's a restaurant there too.
Yes.
So that's a different restaurant, different owner.
That's right. Yeah. Keith up at OCC does an amazing job. They've got a great facility as well. It's incredible. I've visited a few times and had great experiences there. Vic Lima does my job up there, and we coordinate and we help each other bring bands to Southwest Florida occasionally that are traveling and routing. So we can give them 2 shows. We can give them one in St. Pete and one in Port Charlotte. Sometimes it works out well that way. And it's a great relationship. It's cool having a little bit of a network in the region.
And now Bert's going south. than the Burt's Black Pearl.
Yeah.
Which is an Indian dealership.
Indian and Triumph.
Yeah.
And I haven't even visited yet. I need to get down there because you mentioned Perry. She and I have just begun discussions about putting some music there.
We're actually she wants us to play there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's next. There's always a next.
And you guys are going to have a food truck there or something?
There's a food truck there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Twisted Fork food truck there in Fort Myers at Black Pearl. Yeah. Triumph and Indian. And it's, we're excited about the potential of that space as well. And we'll see it grow. We'll see how it evolves, and we'll see, Burt King's going to turn it into something amazing. Like he does everything.
Yeah. The guy can, he's got the Midas touch, right?
He does. Yeah.
I actually met him once.
Yeah. Good dude.
Very nice guy.
Good dude.
Wasn't he like a big car dealer in the old days?
I believe so. I've heard tell of that.
And Perry says really nice things about him.
Yeah.
She loves working for him.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. It's I'm really grateful that he's supportive of, what we're doing. He not only does he not stand in the way of us doing fun things in that space musically and otherwise, he supports it. And
do you think the music helps the sales and service of motorcycles? Do you think, can we say that revenues are up at the restaurant and at the dealership because of the restaurant?
I don't know all of their numbers, and they go through seasons and waves just like we do. But that's part of our goal.
But the live music has to be a huge draw.
Well, we're bringing people to their front door that may not otherwise come where we're not having those events and concerts and performances. So, we want that to spill into the dealership 100%. We'll sometimes do promotions at concerts and events, letting people know about the riding academy where they can go learn to ride. Because if we're bringing people there that aren't bike culture people, let's get them interested, and that's, we enjoy incorporating that at times. And we occasionally sit down and try to brainstorm ways to do that more. Cause I would love to see, the work that I'm doing there benefit them in that way more than it is now.
So as a concert promoter, your job is to bring in these acts, and you brought in some of these big, like Aerosmith tributes, Bon Jovi tributes. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? Like you look at your calendar and you say, okay, I'm looking 6 months out. Now do you get on the phone? Is there like a place you call? Is there like an agent you work with? Like, how do you find these bands, and how do you get them out?
Right.
How do you book them?
Well, when I first started, nobody knew about the place. So I had to drum everything up from the dust, my brother's been in Southwest Florida for 20 plus years, but
he's a Jacksonville guy, but he's drummer, also, right?
Right. Yeah. But so he knew the landscape down here better than me because I had been in New York and then Jacksonville and then came down here before we opened. And so I had to learn the local scene. Luckily I have a friend that you probably know, Chris Garten, in Sarasota, that plays with Kettlefish.
Yeah, great bass player.
We went to music school together.
No kidding.
So I was like, Chris, I need to know everything about the Southwest
That's
Florida.
So funny because I call him up and I ask him for advice on bass playing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure. And so I got to know the local culture a little bit and the local scene and who's who. And so I could hire local bands. And then, when YouTube videos and Facebook videos started getting out there and there's a nice stage, after we made a few improvements from the early days, before I know it, my phone's ringing off the hook with everybody that wants to play there. And I didn't really have to seek people out rather quickly. That altered. And then my name got on some national database as a promoter at a venue that can hold lots of people. And so my phone and email are just constantly going crazy. It's silent right now. Let's move that over there. But it's bananas. I mean, I have cold calls all day long. I have 37 new emails every morning from agents, band leaders, managers, all kinds of stuff.
But what are you looking for? I mean, you're looking for the tributes and the covers, right? Because let's face it, everyone loves original music, but sometimes original music doesn't play well.
I would love to do more original music. I would love to do more big national acts that are playing their own songs and touring their own records. And I know that we'll get to that. But while I'm waiting for a few improvements to happen to our infrastructure there, it's a little bit safer for me to book the tributes and the regionals and the locals and the maybe smaller nationals, and people love it, and that's the main thing. And my job is to put things on that stage that people want to come enjoy in mass, and so. It hasn't been difficult to figure out what people want.
It's accessible. The stage is accessible. Every viewing is perfect where you are, right?
Yeah. And not really a bad seat in the house.
And you offer a free admission. So the backside and then some of the ticketed items are affordable.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We try to keep that price down as much as we can. It's not a money grab, it's really not. I mean, I know I could charge more for tickets on some events than I do. And if you see the one event that's a little pricier than another, it's simply me trying to cover the cost.
Do people sometimes bitch about that? Like, I think I've seen on Facebook, somebody might say, why am I paying all this?
Right.
And you're like, hey, it includes food, man.
Right, right.
It's like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've learned this job, not that I didn't know it already, but this job has certainly reinforced the fact that people will complain about anything. So I've seen a wide array of complaints, but I've been very fortunate. We have had mostly we've been inundated with people that enjoy the space and let us know that they enjoy the space. So I feel really fortunate that people do enjoy what we're putting together for them. And we just want it to get better and better.
What are some of the bigger acts you've had so far?
Well, the nationals that we've done, we had Blackberry Smoke was our first big one. And we had Los Lobos. We had Here
wow.
Come the Mummies. We had a Puddle of Mud.
Yeah, sure.
And there are a few others. And we want to do a lot more of that. But, it's I'm waiting on a couple of things to get right because it'll just make things easier for those big productions to come through, and it costs us less money to rent extra equipment and stuff like that.
But is it true that, like, let's say a band is playing Tampa, and let's say they have to travel and they have time in between their next gig?
Yeah.
Is that how it works sometimes?
We call it routing. And so Port Charlotte is an interesting routing location because there are a lot of bands. We're just far enough away from Tampa for a lot of acts to be comfortable booking shows that close to each other geographically. But for others, they'll be like, no, that's too close. But a lot of bands don't even stop there. They play Orlando and Miami and nothing in between. And, I can be a stop for that. There's a lot of bands that go on these themed cruises out of Miami. And when they get back off the cruise or before they go on the cruise, they're looking for a gig in the area. We're only a couple hours away. So yeah, we're looking to be a routing destination for national acts that are coming through Florida and don't have something within an hour and a half drive of where we are.
Right.
So, yeah.
I know the Hertz Center in Estero. Is it still called the Hertz Center?
Yeah. And
I've seen bands there.
Oh yeah.
And the only reason why they're there, like Elton John played there, because I guess maybe he was in Florida and they got him somehow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a great venue. And I know one of the guys that heads up the production team there, Eric Fortunato. He's very talented at what he does. He's helped me put on some of the nationals that we've done at the Twisted Fork. He helped me with, and he's kind of one of the guys running the show there. And, they do a fantastic job, but that's a big, I mean, what is it? 4,000 or 5,000 seats. If I take away all the tables and chairs and make it standing room only, I'm probably 1,800. So anybody that's going to play there is not going to play my place. So it's cool. I really want to get there for a show. I'm just too busy.
Well, you're getting ready to go back on the road soon, aren't you?
The 15th we fly out, and we've got 3 weeks of dates, mostly in the Western United States.
So now when you're in a hotel room getting ready to go on stage, or maybe you're in the hotel after the show, you now have your book there and you're now you have to still do your bookings.
Oh, 100%.
So you're working while you're on the road.
Yeah. I'm out my lap. The guys make fun of me a lot because I'm sitting in front of my laptop most of the day, and evenings often. And it's,
you're a hard guy to get a hold of.
I'm working on marketing. I'm advertising shows. I'm putting shows on sale that need to sell tickets. I'm, building calendars. I'm booking. It's a constant thing. And yeah, I definitely have to do quite a lot of it while I'm out on the road, but there is a lot of downtime on the road. So it really works out pretty well.
Is it physically possible to get JJ to play Twisted Fork?
I have put a bid in with our agent. So I'm working on that. Yeah.
Because that'd be great.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to make that happen. Maybe in the fall, I don't know. It's, there's so many moving parts and things that go into it.
I bet.
And he's got a lot of other venues that want him to play there in Florida as well. So, just trying to find the right time on the calendar where it's not too close to another booking that's within the region, is a big part of it. And then, he doesn't want to inundate Florida too often with too many shows. So
I know he's big in the northern part of Florida, and I've heard a lot of recordings that were live from the northern part, like the Jacksonville or Tallahassee areas, Gainesville,
St. Augustine as well. Yeah. Yeah. It's, he's all over now. So it's, the Florida gigs, there is an amphitheater in Tallahassee that's become a regular stop for us. That's great. And we just played there pretty recently. And there's an amphitheater in St. Augustine that we play regularly.
So what are some of your favorite things about touring? Like, let's say you set up in this amphitheater, right? And you're getting ready to go on and you see the crowd walking in. Like, are you still like a kid, man? You still get giddy? You still get excited? Is it like still fun like that?
Yeah. It's exciting. It's exciting. Anytime you're getting in front, whether it's 800 people or 10,000 people, whatever it might be, it's a little bit of a rush, I mean, especially when you have a crowd that's very responsive, because you kind of feed off of their energy. And so it makes the show fun.
And then sometimes you have to kick yourself that you're getting paid to do something that you would love, and and you might do it for free.
I mean, you get paid for the travel and the kind of grueling dealing with the living on a bus, and
Now, is that really true? Do you guys will sleep on the bus, or do you get motels, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's the most efficient way to travel within the States. Basically you've got drivers that drive through the night while everyone's in a bunk. And that way you wake up the next morning in a new city, and we're loading into the venue at 11 a.m. And they've got a lot of stuff to set up. And then we're sound checking around 3 or 4 p.m. And then the opening band is starting at 7:30.
And then how do they feed you? Like, what do they do for dinner? Like, are you on your own, or do they have bringing a catering?
Every venue is a little bit different. We have a lot of different ways of tackling that. Some places have their own kitchen and cafeteria and catering, and others, outsource to bring that in-house, and they have a space to do it. And others are like, here's a buyout. You guys just go get some food, And then other times we're kind of on our own, and it's like we get a little per diem, and we're just like, well, 5 or 6 of us will get together and find a place down the street. And,
Have you conditioned yourself to be able to sleep on the bus? Like, it's been so many years now that it's probably no problem for you to get into that bunk and crash out.
There occasionally, maybe we leased a bus from a company that just hired a driver that used to be a truck driver, and he hasn't learned how to drive a bus yet. And, not really easy on the brakes. Okay, there are times when it's tough, but I've gotten pretty used to it. Yeah, I'll take a melatonin.
Sure.
Zonk out.
So now's the time of the show where you tell us some fun stories or some interesting things about some people or some funny things that happened to you, or
no pressure.
Interesting stuff.
God, I don't even know where to start. 14 years in New York City. There was a lot of brushing shoulders with, the celebrity scene. I played in a place called Bimmelman's Bar, which is at the Carlisle Hotel on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I was in a band with an amazing pianist and singer named Loston Harris. And we were sort of the house band there 3 to 5 nights a week for 11 years. He still plays there. I think he's been there for a long time. But at any rate, it was one of those places where it was swank, and you walk in the door, and just to stand at the bar is a $35 cover, to sit at a table is a $60 cover, and you order a Johnny Black and it's $28, and so it kept out the riffraff,
Sure.
so to speak.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it was a place that celebrities could go and kind of be free from the paparazzi or the chatty public, because those people just didn't go there.
And this was a jazz band at the time?
Yeah. That's straight ahead jazz, very influenced by Nat King Cole, that kind of style of music.
So you would do originals and the traditional covers in that band?
Yeah. We played what they call the American Songbook, the standards, and it was awesome, amazing experience, and just being on the jazz scene in New York City was an amazing experience for me. But a lot of different people will come through that bar. I got to meet some great comedians and comic writers.
Bill Murray by chance?
Not Bill Murray, although I met him at a benefit somewhere else once, and he was hilarious. But Martin Short was maybe the funniest person I think I've ever met, and Mel Brooks once as well. And the one funny anecdote, Burt Reynolds had apparently just been to the opening night of the remake of The Longest Yard, when he was in the original back in the day, and then it was remade with, I think, Adam Sandler or something, right? And he played the older guy.
I think he had a small role in it, yeah.
And so he had been to the red carpet premiere of it in New York City, and he was staying at the Carlisle. He didn't live in New York. So he came in, and he was sat by himself in this leather banquette booth in the corner, you know, it's like kind of like where the celebrities wanted to be seated. And he was just sitting there having a drink, listening to the music, and he was very engaged in the music and responsive to it. And about halfway through our first set or second set, it was later, a guy came in his suit and sat down across from him, and it kind of seemed like the guy was letting Bert have it a little bit. He was kind of laying into him a little bit, and Bert Reynolds never made eye contact with the guy. The guy's here, and he's just watching the band, and he's doing that thing, you know, where he kind of smirks and chews his gum, that Burt Reynolds thing.
Yeah.
And then the guy finishes what he's saying, and he looks at him, and I don't know what he said, but he said a couple of words, and the guy gets up and walks out. And we finish the set, and Burt Reynolds comes over and palms me $100 bill and says, "Nice playing, partner," and does the little wink with the chewing the gum and the whole thing. And I was like, that was amazing.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah, that was incredible. But here's where it gets really funny. I found out why the guy was laying into him. The next morning, I opened up the New York Post, and this particular night when he was walking the red carpet to go into the theater at the premiere, some paparazzi was up in his face with a camera, and he punched the guy.
So there's like a lawsuit.
So it was his agent tearing him a new one because he got in trouble. Sure. And that had happened right before he came in.
Yeah.
So he wound down from that by coming to the jazz
don't
bar.
you think Bert's like a throwback to the old actors that
100%,
didn't want to take shit from anybody?
Yeah, I don't think we have as many of those.
His greatest role, in my opinion, was Boogie Nights.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
So you had so many wonderful nights in New York City, man, right? I mean, I bet you could probably write a book about those experiences.
Yeah, I probably should start getting some of them on paper so I don't forget.
I'm from New York too, and I didn't run into the jazz circles, but I was into the rock and blues scene.
Sure.
But the great thing about New York City, especially the Upper East Side, is there's such an energy in the air. There's electricity. No matter what time it is. It could be 10 o'clock, it could be 2 in the morning, it could be 4 in. There's something going on.
It just feels,
there's energy,
it feels
man.
vital. Yeah.
You know?
It feels vital all the time. And it's, there's that thing, I guess the kids call it FOMO now, but the fear of missing out. But if I were home, even on like a Wednesday or Thursday night, if I happened to be home and not playing a gig and it was 10 p.m. and I'm sitting in my apartment, I would have this feeling of, what are you doing? You should be out listening to some music. There's something great.
At your doorstep.
There is something great happening out there.
Yeah.
2 stops down on the train, just go. And so I did a lot of that.
Yeah. You need discipline because it's very easy to go out every night when you're in the city.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to make yourself work out. You have to make yourself eat good. You have to make yourself go to sleep early, right?
Yeah. I spent way too much of my money enjoying the art scene and the music scene in New York and the food scene too. Oh my gosh. But it was an incredible experience. I'd never trade it. So
then you came back to Jacksonville, or did you go back to Florida?
Jacksonville, yeah.
So that must have been a shock, right? From going from the
New York City. But I knew what it was. And I was still traveling, I was still touring. So it was, I didn't feel like, I'm locked back down in sleepy old Jacksonville or anything like that. And I enjoy Jacksonville.
A guy like you, do you have to have like an agent, or do you do your deals yourself? Like, does somebody call you up and say, I need you? Or are you dealing through another guy? Like,
I've had representation in the past. It's not something I require because most of my work is that of a sideman. If I ever find the time to finish writing all these songs I've half written over the years, and try to start putting something out there, if it were to gain any traction, and there were enough people that wanted to hear it, then I might seek out representation. But it's not something I need to have. No.
But can you play your originals out now? I mean, or do you need other guys to?
I really need to get in the studio and get them documented properly and decide exactly what they are and fine tune them. And then it would be a matter of getting some guys together and putting a show.
Now, there's probably some horn players that you've known over the years. You probably like love to play with them. So when you get a chance to sit next to these guys or stand next to them, you're probably geeked up, right?
Oh yeah,
like these are your buddies.
Sure, yeah. I happened to become good friends with a guy named Ian Hendrickson Smith when I was in New York, and he shortly after I met him began working with a soul band in Brooklyn called Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, who went on to just kind of birth a whole new era of retro soul music. And it was really fantastic to watch that happen. And I got to sub for their trumpet player every now and then. But he and the original trumpet player in that band are now the horn section for The Roots on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
Sure.
And so those guys are like, any chance to play with guys like them. And there's 100 other guys out there that are just incredible.
In your opinion, is jazz gaining popularity, losing popularity? Is it dying?
No, I think it's just evolving. I think that certain subgenres of it may be losing popularity and not getting the traction. Is, like they're still in the archive and they're still vital, but they're not as popular. And I think that there's new energy coming to the jazz world through just it evolving into something else, and new music's being, I don't know, poured into it. And that's, and those things are still getting big audiences. So I don't think it's, there's a whole jazz is dead movement out there and joke and all that sort of thing. And I get it. I do. But I think it's always going to be a shape shifting thing.
Well, don't you think that it requires a little bit of a sophisticated ear to listen to jazz?
I think
in today's world of everything now is 15-second clips.
Well, it requires
patience.
It requires listeners that want to be challenged in some way. So if you want music that is spoon feeding you candy the entire time,
which most people are listening to right now,
then there's a lot of it out there for you. If you want music that has nuggets of amazing little moments that organically arrive at those moments instead of formulaically arriving at those moments, and you're willing to be challenged by deciphering that, then I think it's, that's what it requires, So it's kind of hard to be a casual listener to jazz.
I agree.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself today? Would you give yourself a young version of yourself that now that what would you say to your younger Marcus?
Get a real degree in something besides music. I'm kidding. Yeah, I think it's what I tell young musicians, and I probably should have told myself, is to work really hard at your craft so that you're prepared for every opportunity that comes your way. I was very fortunate that a lot of great opportunities came my way, and I was prepared enough at the moment to either thrive in them immediately or thrive in them rather quickly by, rising to the occasion. But there were other opportunities that came my way that I was in a season of laziness or procrastination about my craft, and I missed an opportunity because I wasn't prepared for it in the moment when it happened. And so I think a diligence of being prepared and being, always, like you said earlier, trying to be better. I think that requires a consistency and a dedication, because when a good opportunity comes, if you happen to be in a moment of not being on top of your game, it's you're going to regret that for a long time to come.
Sure.
So, and I've had that happen a couple of times, and it's, no complaints about the career trajectory for me or anything, but I look back at those and I wish I had been ready for that when it came.
Speaking of bands, one of my favorite bands growing up was Chicago.
Sure.
And the horn section there, I think that was the first time that like FM was playing rock and roll with horns.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people were like, wow, what is this? The Chicago Transit Authority was their original name, right? Those guys I think are still around, man. I think they're still doing it. Absolutely. Same guys, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of the same guys. And yeah, they're incredible. I mean, it's and that's a band that people frequently ask me about, like, oh, do you like Chicago? Because you're in a horn section. And it's obvious, and but yes, I do. Yeah, they're fantastic. Tower of Power is another one.
Tower of Power is a big name.
Yeah. And it's
how
funny,
about the average, remember the average white band?
Oh yeah.
Pick Up the Pieces.
Incredible.
I was just listening to that this morning, actually came on.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're classic examples of what a horn section can add to the sound of a band. Popular.
Those are the popular ones.
Yeah. And they are the mainstream ones. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of have always loved the Motown stuff and the old soul stuff that had horn sections in it. And a lot of them also had strings, but, I'm more drawn to that than the sort of rock and roll version. But then I've played with a bunch of bands that do the rock and roll version and the blues version with the horn section.
So I still am a huge Springsteen fan, and he had a unique relationship with Clarence Clemens, and he treated him like his brother, and he would always put a spotlight on him.
Yeah,
and Clarence had a chance to shine at every concert, right?
Yeah,
and he was a lot of people's introduction to to saxophone in rock and roll was Clarence Clemens.
Yeah, I mean his, just I can see his silhouette on stage right now when you say his name, and he was part of that whole tapestry of Springsteen's thing, and very integral to that whole sound, while he was around, and yeah, and he's such a great example of what one horn player can do, with not even necessarily in moments not being part of a section, and that's it's pretty. It's I would say I respect it a lot because I know how difficult it is to be one horn player on stage with a rock band. It's tough to find the right way to fit in and not be out of place in that genre.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, in our final minutes here, how can people contact you? Like, how can people know where you're going to be touring? Like, is there a website they can go to, a link, Facebook?
Yeah, jjgray.com, I'm pretty sure is the website, but there's a touring page there that has all of the dates as they get updated. And that's probably the best place to go. But yeah, there's a Facebook page. It's all easy to find.
When does the tour start and what city? Like, where are you going to be going? You going up north and then coming south, or are you going west?
I'd probably have to look at my phone. I don't want to do that right now, but it's I know this one. I think it starts in Houston, and I think we go from Texas out towards California by way of Arizona and then up to the Pacific Northwest and then back over to like Colorado and some of those places.
That's an incredible amount of traveling. I mean, like that bus is putting on some serious miles.
Yeah, we put some miles on those buses. No doubt. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for coming in, man.
My pleasure, brother.
It's a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you and hearing you very soon.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.